Hello there.
General Kenobi.
This week I'm going to share some simple tools that'll make it a snap to express yourself in Scratch. My digital storytelling toolkit is a collection of custom blocks that does all the coding for you, teaching your sprites to jump, throw, wiggle, shake, and fade in and out, all with a single command. And I'm also going to show you a super simple new animation system for digital stories. And we're going to practice on characters from the Star Wars universe. We're going to build on concepts I taught you in our last digital story lesson, Scratch's Zoom call, and in our original digital storytelling lesson way back in 2020. New to Scratch, you might want to start with Cat and Mouse, my introductory coding tutorial. It'll teach you everything you need to know to get started. If you like my content, please subscribe. The sad story is that only a small portion of the viewers who watch my videos are actually subscribed to me, so it would mean a lot if you hit that button. Let's get to it. Okay, so you're looking at the thumbnail for my digital storytelling toolkit project, which you'll be able to find at chromeworks.ca/projects, as always, or you can go to the Chromeworks page on Scratch, and you'll be able to find this project there as well. I'm really proud of this particular project. I think it's going to be really useful if you're interested in telling stories in Scratch, particularly if you don't know a lot of coding. There's probably lots of things you want to try to execute in your programs that you're not quite sure how to do. So just use this, the custom blocks in here, and you'll be able to automate a lot of the functions that used to be quite tricky. And you'll learn a lot about coding as well if you look at the nuts and bolts of how I put these particular things together. The project itself is a little example of digital storytelling as well. If you click on the green flag here, you can see that it actually walks you through the process of how to use it. We'll just get through the beginning part here. Actually, let me skip the beginning here, and you'll see what the interface looks like. And you'll see that there's a bunch of buttons, one for each of the commands that you're going to be able to use inside this. So if you click on any of these particular buttons, it'll give you a little tutorial on how to use that block. Here's an example of the shake block here. Very nice. And it'll just explain all the parameters that you have to fill in. Anyway, so you can explore this project on your own. I'm not going to show you all the different animations in here right now, but basically you can click on this project and find out how each of these individual blocks work. If you do want to use these objects in your own projects, then the way to do it is to drag that. There's this one block here called Code Library that contains all of the code you're going to need for this particular project. And so you'll see there's all these hat blocks here, each one of the custom block that has all the instructions for how to do a particular thing. So here's the shake command that we were just looking at, for example. And so all of this coding's all done for you, and all you're going to have to do is grab the block that says shake and then fill in a number. I'm going to show you the details of it in just a second here. But so how do you get this stuff into your own project? Well, first you have to drag this code library into your backpack. I've already dropped it here, so I'm not going to do it in this case. And then it should be available to other projects. I'm going to flip over to another tab here where I have a blank project with a couple of sprites in it. And let's go back to my library. And I'm going to go down to the item where my code library is and drag it back into my sprite drawer. So you can see all that code that's come across with the sprite. And now I can pick any of these hat blocks and grab that function and place it into the code for one of these characters that I want to use. Let me show you that shake block again. So we'll grab this block here that says define shake. And we'll drag it over to my cat sprite. There we go. And now, if I go to my blocks, I should have access to that shake block here. So let's go ahead and hide this library. We don't need to be looking at it right now. And so on my cat here, if I want my cat to shake now, all I have to do is tell it how many seconds I want to shake at and give it an intensity number. So let's try an intensity of 5 here and see what that looks like. There we go. And if you want a more intense shake, you can increase that number. So here's a shake for 10 seconds at an intensity of 2. And again, it's happening for 2 seconds. Perfect. Okay, so let's try dragging in the fade in and fade out blocks next. So again, do not try and drag over the blocks from your palette here because they won't bring the actual definition files in. So you're going to have to go to these hat blocks and drag them over to your sprite. So there's fade in and fade out. And you can see that as soon as these get into here, we don't really even have to look at them or change them because we have these blocks over on the left-hand side here, one for fade in and one for fade out. And so let's grab these two. And all you have to do is put a length in here. So let's try fading out at a speed of 10 frames. And that's how many times we go around that repeat loop. You can see we fade out pretty quickly, and if I want to fade in more slowly, I can go with a bigger number, like 100 frames, for example, and you'll see that I fade in much more slowly here. So again, a really useful function. So the idea is you add these to your project along with other stuff. So for example, if I want to fade in and then move across the screen, I would go when green flag clicked, fade in, and then I would drag my, I would probably set up a start position here. So let's go, say, grab a go-to block. That'll set my start position. And then I'll drag my object across the screen here. And then I'll add a glide command. And I'll have him say something like, say, that was easy. And then have him fade out again. Okay, let's give that a try. There we go. Whoa, though we probably only wanted to say that for 1 second, I guess. Because if we leave the say block without a timer on it, of course we're going to get into trouble. So let's go say for 2 seconds, and we'll paste that in. Let's try that one more time. There we go. And that was easy. All right, so let's go have a look at some of the other blocks that are in here. The next one we're going to drag over is, so we've done shake. I'm going to do wiggle, which is kind of associated with shake. And let's drag that over to our cat sprite here. And so wiggle will just rotate your character. So let's try adding a wiggle command here. Ooh. I don't think I copied that properly. Let's try that one more time. So grab the wiggle defining block, drag it over to sprite 1. You'll see that when it superimposes itself over the other sprite, let me zoom here a little bit for you. That when you do manage to drag it correctly, you'll see a little wiggle actually happen inside the sprite. That'll let you know that you're superimposed over there properly. And then you can let go, and it should be copied over. And you know it's copied over properly because you'll now have a wiggle block. Now I added this twice, so I'll just delete one of them. So now I have a wiggle block here. Let's just clean up our blocks a little bit. Again, we don't have to look at the individual code here. We can just add a little wiggle here. So I'm going to go, before I fade out, I'll say wiggle for, so 3 seconds, and intensity 3. Let's have a look at what that looks like. And there we go, there's a little wiggle. I'm going to get rid of that other code in the front there that we don't need to look at anymore. All right, and so let's see a higher intensity. Let's say like a 12 or something, and we'll have a look at that. There we go, so that's a much bigger wiggle. And you can have it wiggle as many degrees as you like, and it'll go through there. So this is a good example of custom blocks in action, right? If we have a look at the actual details of the custom block here, it's just doing all the work for you that you would do if you wanted to wiggle a character. So let me just walk you through the steps here just to give you an example of how I would have made one of these. So I created a custom block called wiggle. So when I went in and went make a block, I gave it a name, wiggle. Now if there's any if there's an amount of time or some other variable you want to put in here that's going to be used by this thing. So in this case, I'm looking at for how many seconds it's going to go and how strong it's going to be, the intensity, right? So if I was going to create a block like this, what I would do is click on the Make a Block button, which is under the My Block section here. I would go wiggle for... Now here's where I want to enter the blank where I can add some text. I'm going to click on the word add an input here, and that will create a little bubble here. And now I need to name the variable here. So I'll just go SECS for seconds. And then I will add a little bit more text, wiggle for at an intensity of, and then another bubble, and then type in the word intensity. There we go. And so once I add an OK here, you can see here's my new definition block, and now I have to define under here what exactly is going to happen. So let's have a look at the finished file. I actually went wiggle for this many seconds, and so here's where a spot where we're actually figuring out how many seconds we're going to work for. We're saying we're setting a timer here, a temp time variable that's set to where the timer is right now. And then we keep repeating until the timer actually runs longer than the amount of time, the temp time plus the amount of time we want it to run. And so it'll basically, this is a little bit of code here that will actually help us to make sure that this only runs this loop will continue running until the timer runs out, and then it'll stop basically. So it'll continue wiggling. And so all we're doing here is turning at a certain number of degrees, and that's our intensity here. So when you type in that number, it feeds that number into this spot here, and it feeds the time into this spot here. And it's turning, so you can see the way I've broken it up. I'm going just 2 repeats to the right, and then 4 repeats to the left, and then 2 to the left. The reason I didn't do 4 and 4 is because as we're doing our tilt here, if I go 4, let's say I was tilting 90 degrees, it would go like this, and then like this, and then like this, and then like this. And we don't want to do that. We want it to go halfway to the right, and then go back down to the middle, then all the way around, and then back, so that it's swinging like a pendulum, of course. And so that's why we only do half the turn, the right-hand turn, or the clockwise turn here, and then the other half of the clockwise turn here. And that'll make sure that it's arranged properly so that we don't end up with a lopsided wobble here. Anyway, so really simple to make these. Sometimes it takes a little bit of thought to figure out how it's going to work. But once you've got a custom block like this set up, you can make your own custom blocks, of course. Then you never have to do this coding again, right? You just have to drag this block in, and it does everything you need it to do. All right, so next I'm going to show you some of the cool animation tools that are available in this toolkit. And in order to do that, I've recruited some characters from the Star Wars universe. We've got Commander Cody on the left here, and General Grievous on the right. And we've also got a Star Wars background here. So you can find these files. I went searching for Star Wars Sprite Pack on Scratch and found a whole bunch of these. You'll find credits in the description for the file on where these actual graphics came from. Some very talented scratchers have put these costumes together for us, and they're looking quite fancy. And they're a really good example of how to do complex animations, because we've got these characters here. Let's have a look at Commander Cody. He has a number of different costumes here. I think it's over 50 different costumes, and they're all labeled according to what it is the character is going to do during these. There's actually 32 costumes here for Commander Cody. So there's like actually 4 different things he can do: shoot, walk, run, and get hurt or die. And so this is all set up for animation inside the game, but you can also use it in digital story projects as well. And it's just a matter of figuring out which costume numbers contain which action it is that you want to be doing here. So we set it the default costume number 1 here, and I've already dragged in the defined timed animations here, and we've got our new timed animation block here. So as I said earlier, there's 2 different kinds of animation custom blocks that I've created for you here for the 2 different types of animation you're going to go. Basically, you're going to need to use this block, the timed one, if you've got a repetitive motion like walking, for example, that you want your character to do. So in this case, I want my character to walk, and so I've got to figure out which blocks it is that contain the walking that I'm looking for. So we'll go scrolling down here. We see that walk starts at sprite number 7, and it continues until sprite number 14 here. So we'll say timed animation from costume 7 to 14. And we've got a frames per second here, which dictates how fast he's going to walk for. So let's just start with maybe 12, which is a pretty good animation speed, and how long we want to keep him walking for. So let's say 3 seconds. And I'm going to have this go off when I hit the space key so I can maximize my screen here and show you what that looks like. There we go. So when I hit the space key, you'll see he'll start walking. he's actually saying his number of frames here, and that was an old version of the animation that I'm going to get rid of here. That was just for troubleshooting purposes I did that. You won't find that in the final file. Let's try that one more time. There we go, and you can see that he's walking at a nice pace there. Now he's not moving at the same time, and the key to doing that is we've got to make him walk for the same amount of time that the animation is running for here. So let's go ahead and we'll grab a glide to block here. So let's tell him to glide. Well, first of all, let's set him up in a start position here. We'll tell him that his current location is going to be a start position. Then we'll drag him over to General Grievous here, and we'll tell him to glide to that location. We want that timing to match up here. So now we can't run this concurrently here. Watch what happens when I hit the space key. He will do his animation first and then slide over there. So we need both those actions to happen at once. So what we're going to do is send a little broadcast here. Before we start running this, we're going to get a parallel process running here. So let's go to our events. We'll broadcast a new message. And we'll just call it walk. So we're going to broadcast that walk message before we start running this animation. And then over here, we'll have him start doing his movement simultaneously when he receives that command here. Let's try that again. We'll have him go back. Sorry about that. We'll have him go back to his start location here. And you'll see that when I hit the space key here. Now, I only had him going for 1 second there. Let's turn that glide into glide for 3 seconds. You got to match these two times up with each other, of course. Let's try that one more time. And you can see now he's beautifully walking across to Grievous there. So we can change the pace that he's walking at by changing the frames per second here. That's how fast the animation's running. So if I wanted to walk a little slower, I could have him go at 5 frames per second. He's still going to walk for 5 seconds here. So let's make this... Sorry, for 5. He's still going to walk for 3 seconds here, but we can change that to 5. And now he'll be walking a little bit slower, and the animation will run slower at the same time. Let's try that out. So you want to play with animation to make it look like he's not skating across the floor. And so there's a little bit of tricky playing around that you want to do here to make sure that that it's a smooth animation. But basically, it's a matter of adjusting those timings around to make everything work beautifully. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now, sometimes you don't want him to keep repeating the same animation anymore. There are some things that you want your character to do, like shoot, for example, where you're going to want... So we've got a shoot animation here, I believe. There we go. And that starts at 1 and goes all the way to number 6 here. And you can see that he's moving his gun around and shooting. So when you want to shoot, you don't want him to keep repeating it. Well, let me show you what that would look like if I ran this here. And let's have him shoot and walk at the same time. Okay, that's not quite working properly. Let's remove the walking for now. And we'll just have a look at what that animation looks like here. So we're going to go timed animation from costume 1 to 7. Sorry, I didn't have that proper there in the first place. So there we go, you see, and he's going through the animation over and over again. But what if I only wanted to shoot once and then do something else? You'd have to do a bit of math to figure out how to do that. It would work in the end if you went to 7 frames a second and did this for 1 second. You could get him shooting once. But you're better off using the other custom block that I've set up here, and that's the one that's called animate frames to costume number. Let me drag that one over to Cody here, and you'll see that that gives me a totally new block. Animate frames to costume, and the way this one works is you get your character set up for the starting costume just using an ordinary switch costume command. So let's tell him to get to his initial costume, shoot 1, stand 1, and we'll tell him to go all the way to costume 7 at whatever speed we want. So we can go at a faster speed here to have him shoot faster. Let's say a speed of 15 here, and let's attach that back to the space key again. And you can see now he's shooting quite a bit faster. We probably want him to go back to that frame 1 again when he's done here. So let's have him switch costume back to frame 1 when he's done here. And then he won't have his foot up in the air when he's done shooting. Let's have a look at that. There we go. And now we've got him shooting quite nicely at a fast speed. And so that's the way this second animation block works. It just plays each animation once. And it'll start, the reason I have it starting rather than entering a start point here, I want it to actually start at wherever the last point was, because that makes it a useful tool for frame animation when you're doing digital stories that are entirely done inside a frame animation. I'm going to show you that in a minute here, but I just want to show you this same function being used with a couple of things that General Grievous does. So Grievous here, we're going to use that same animate frames to costume command here. He does a bunch of commands that you wouldn't want to repeat themselves. A lot of them are combat commands, like lighting up his lightsaber, for example. So that is an animation that runs from 1 to 8 here, basically. So let's go and tell him to do that. We'll grab our custom block here, and we'll add a different keyboard binding here. Let's tell it to do something when I hit the letter A, and we'll grab our custom block here, and we'll say animate frames to costume 8. Now we're going to want to initialize it at the beginning by telling it to switch to costume 1. Whoops. There we go. And frames per second, let's try 10 here. So now when I hit the letter A here, you'll see, well, we want to first get him onto his non-lightsaber costume. There we go. We've got it turned off now. And when I hit the letter A, you'll see his lightsaber will light up once. So we wouldn't want that repeating itself over and over again, and that's why I've created this other block here. Let's try making him do something else. Let's look at one of his other costumes here. He's got something called slash here that goes from 13 to /4 to 26. So we can't use the costume number here. We're just going to tell him to go to the /1, which is the first slash, and then we'll tell him to animate to frame 26 at that same speed, which is 10 frames per second. There we go. Let's give that a try. And you can see that every time I hit that A key, he does this little slide here. Beautiful. Now, I do want him to switch back to that default slash costume when we're done. So I'm going to set it like that. Let's give that another try here. There we go. And now he reverts back. Beautiful. As you can see, we can continue doing this for any of the different motions that are available here for General Grievous. Let me show you another one here. So we've got one called jump, or I think that's jumping blow. Let's have a look at that one. That sounds interesting. So that starts on 50 and then goes down to 65. So we're going to start at that. So we're going to go to 65 and we'll start and end at the first one that says jumping blow. There we go. Let's max that out. Nice. Beautiful. And so you can see how a lot of the guesswork's taken out of this animation here by using this custom block. Beautiful. So I mentioned that there's one other use for this animate to frame block, and that's for frame animations like this one. This is a little file called Coconut Mayhem, designed by a scratcher named Turkey3. And I'm just going to run it for you here to give you a sense of what it looks like. So it's a little silent movie about somebody trying to toss somebody a coconut on a windy day and how he keeps getting foiled by the wind on this island. So it's a fun little animation. You can see. And if we look inside the file, you can see that it's made up. So everything in the file is contained inside these little animation files. So what the maker of the file basically did was draw these stick men and then duplicate the frame and draw the next frame of animation. So the entire story is all told in 180 different frames of animation. So rather than having each character have its own costumes and controls, it's all done inside one frame. I showed you a project earlier by a couple of months ago by Luca, one of our other Chromeworks members, who does this kind of animation as well, and it really is fairly easy to do with stickmen. You can just go in and manipulate these characters just by reshaping them like this, and then have them do whatever it is you want them to do. So to be able to control this animation, you can just run the characters. In this case, the person who set this file up just basically created a loop where he was just changing frames with a next costume, next costume, next costume, and just going through the story that way. But what if we wanted to add some sound effects to it? You can see here, there's the script. It's just a whole bunch of a forever loop of next costumes that he's done here. But what if we wanted to add some sound effects here? We couldn't add a sound effect into this loop and continue using next costume. And that is where this custom block comes in. So let me show you. I've got the same file set up. I borrowed his sprite from him. And here's the next costume loop that we set up here. So when I click the green flag now, I've got a couple of things happening. So I've got it set up to basically to the point where the question mark appears over his head. He's going, what the heck? Because he tries throwing it and it starts coming back to him. So I figured out by looking at the costumes here that was around frame 46 that we were interested in. And that's where the question mark appears over his head. And so we're just going to animate this from costume 1 to 46 at a frame rate of 10. And then at that point, we're gonna stop the animation. We'll just pause for just a tiny fraction of a second. And then we're going to start a sound effect. And the sound effect is just my character going, huh? And then we're going to continue going to 97, which is the moment where it actually bonks him in the head. I'll play a little bonk sound effect there. And then we'll continue playing the animation to the end. So you can see by using this animate frames command, we're able to break our project up into a whole bunch of different commands and then insert sound effects or music or whatever, or cut screens and stuff like that into it and add a little pizzazz to our file. So let me show you the remixed version of the project here. And so the same kind of stuff happens. He tosses the ball. And then the wind picks it up. He can't grab it. And then it goes back and he throws it. Whoops, why are my sound effects not working here? I think my sound effects aren't here. Well, now it's working. Let's give that one more try here. Stop. There you go. And then when it bonks him on the head, there we go. Beautiful. And so you can see how I was able to use that animate to frames command to exert a little bit more control over how I'm setting up this project here. And that works quite nicely. Okay. So that explains my animation blocks here. I think they're quite useful. I've got just a couple more blocks I wanted to show you today. Let's go back to our original backdrop here. And we'll make our stickmen hide, and we'll bring back Scratch the Cat here for reprisal. And he's not visible right now because he's faded out. Okay, there we are. So Scratch Cat is back. I'm going to show you the new say command that we have here. This is actually designed by one of our other Chromeworks members, SuperCannon20. And I found this in one of his other storytelling projects and thought it was so handy that I thought I would use it in here. So here's the say block that he created for me. I'm going to drop it into here. So this is sort of an advanced say command that instead of just having the text appear on the screen, let me show you what that looks like. I can type in what I want him to say, and he'll say it one letter at a time. So let me show you. I'm going to go, hi, my name is Scratch. Now we have to pick a tone, which is how high-pitched the sound is that it's going to make every time that I make this appear. So I'll just type 50, which I think is a pretty good sound. And let's attach that back to a space key here again, just so we can see what happens. Okay, let's give that a try. There we go, beautiful. Now he's off in a bit of a weird spot, which made the text bubble float off to the right here. Let's just move him off to the side a little, and maybe that'll look a little better. There we go, beautiful. And you can see it's just a much slicker way to do text animation that makes it look more like those, more like an animated movie rather than like a comic book. You can change the speed that he talks. Now, paradoxically, the higher this number gets, the slower he talks. Let me show you a speed of 4. And we'll also bump up the pitch of that sound. Let's try a sound of 80 here. And I'll show you again. So a higher pitch sound and a slower scroll here. Let's try an even slower scroll. Let's try a scroll of 10 here. And we'll make the tone even higher, 120. And let me show you what that looks like. Now that's a little too slow to actually be useful, but you get the idea. So you can control how fast the text scrolls across the screen and the pitch of the sound that it makes. So thank you to SuperCannon20 for supplying that file to us. And I just had one other thing that I wanted to show you. This was designed, or actually a couple more things. I've got these transition files here. Let me drag the transition over to here. So these transitions, you can use them on sprites like your characters. But I think they're mostly good for little text screens and stuff like that. So I've got a text screen here with multiple sprites. Meanwhile, back at Scratch HQ. And so we're going to translate between these two. Rather than just flipping from one to the next, we're actually going to use a command here to have them do kind of video style transition from one effect to another. So I've got 4 different prefabricated transitions here, and let me show them to you. I'm going to attach them to a keyboard event. So let's go letter B here. All right. So there's 4 different transitions, and basically just does a next costume, but does some fancy visual effects in between. Let me do a number 1 here, and I'll max my screen out. So let me show you what transition number 1 looks like. Whoop. That is not working. Let me have a look here. Transition. Oh, I did it to letter A instead of B. I'm not quite sure why I did that. Let's try that one more time here. There we go. And so it starts off, meanwhile, back at Scratch headquarters. I didn't start at the proper one, so let's actually switch to the proper costume here so that this effect looks right. And then we'll do a little pause for 1 second, and then we'll do our transition. Okay, this should look a little better. So let's look at that transition. Meanwhile, and then it changes color, turns black, and comes back again, and then it's back at Scratch headquarters, and then it fades away. All right, let's try transition number 2. Meanwhile, so I shouldn't have that hidden at the beginning here. Now, I think in the final version of this project, I actually got rid of the fade away here. There's my transition, and it's fade, and so it swirls around and then switches to the other one. Beautiful. All right, let me show you transition 3. Meanwhile, and this one uses the pixelate effect, which is really cool. And then brings it back again. And then transition 4 uses a mosaic effect. Let me show that one to you. Again, we've hidden our file here. So let's have a look at number 4. Meanwhile, and then it switches to a mosaic effect and then comes back to the second one. So just some fun little transition files you can do here. I think in the final version of this project that I gave you, it doesn't fade out in the end. And if you wanted to add that back into the custom file, you could reintroduce this, but I believe I deleted this in the final version so that things don't actually fade out. And the last file I wanted to show you, the last custom block we have here, is one that is called jump throw. Now this is the most elaborate of all of them, and just because it has some very complex math in here. And on my live stream this weekend, I'm going to show a little bit of the details of how the math all worked out here. My son Jeffrey, the master coder, put this together by creating a parabola, basically, that had objects go from one spot to another. Now, let me drag this on top of my cat sprite here, and I'm going to show you how this works right now. So we've got a new custom block here that says jump or throw to an X location, or an XY location, at a certain height and a certain time. All right, I'm going to attach this to a keyboard event. Let's go when I hit the letter C. Darn it, it never goes to where I want it to go. There's letter C. And so let's get a starting position for our character, because we're going to want him to go back here. And we'll have him pause a little bit before we do what we're going to do. And so I want our character to jump across the screen here. So let's tell him to jump to this location. And so the way this works is with some very complicated math, we can have him go through a parabola where he jumps to a certain height and then always lands exactly at this spot here. So this spot we're looking at here is 187 by minus 115. Now the height, let's tell him to jump 100 pixels high and do it over the course of 2 seconds here. So let's try hitting the letter C here. And you'll see that he does a nice little jump that takes exactly 2 seconds. Let's have it go faster. We'll try 1 second here. And there he goes, a nice jump. We can have him go even faster if you want. You can go 0.5 seconds. It's a very fast jump there. So you can have him jump anywhere you want on the screen just by changing these XY coordinates. So if you want him to land here, for example, we can just add new XY coordinates. So an X of 187 and a Y of, let's try a Y of 100, so a little bit higher. And now, when I click that command, you see he'll jump to here. And so the really awesome use for that is we can have our characters jump all the way across the screen or wherever we want to and always land exactly where we want them to, which is a tricky thing to do with coding, actually. If you're going to be coding them to jump through the air for a certain amount of time, you could use a glide command for 1 second and then have him go up and then go down again. But you'd have to time the loop so that he ended up back down at the ground at the exact right time. Now, you can also use this to throw as well. I'm going to go grab a ball. Go grab a little colored ball here. We'll move it to this spot. And again, we're going to attach that to a keyboard command here. Let's go D. And I'll tell it to go to a start position. And then ball over here. So let's go glide to that location. All right. We don't actually want to glide. Sorry, we're going to use our custom block here. So let's go to grab our jump throw block, drag it over to the ball. And so just as we did it with a jump, I mean, a throw really isn't that different from a jump. So let's go fix that little bit of code up. Where did it go here? It's probably underneath here. There it is. And so let's have it go to 200x and minus 150y. And we'll put a little pause there just to make it a bit more interesting. Oh, the pause will come after we reset our position here. All right, so now he's going to throw. Oh, we have to finish those last parabolas. So the height, we'll make it, let's try a shallower throw. We'll try a height of 50 and a time of 1 here. So hit the D button, and there we go. And then he throws the ball shallowly Now let's try it much higher. Let's try a height of 150. See what that looks like. And then he throws it much higher. Let's try something even higher than that. 250. There you go, a nice high throw that goes almost the entire height of the screen. So you can see this is a very, very flexible script. I'm just really impressed with the coding here. It actually turns out to be quite complicated doing this, and it's all based on the math around parabolas, but fortunately you don't have to know any math to use this command. We've made it nice and simple for you. And that's what these custom blocks are all about, just doing really, really complex sets of commands, but you can see how much code there is in some of these guys, and some of it quite complicated, but it's all been rendered into something nice and simple and bite-sized for you, so you don't have to worry about it at all. Just use these custom blocks and just start creating code around them. So I'm really eager to see what you guys make with this. There's a remix room, as usual, that you can find on my website and also in the description for this file. So please make a little story using these tools and share it with me, and I will show the best versions as always on my live stream every week. So looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. In the meantime, thanks for learning with me. If you have any questions or anything, you can go, as always, to my website and find my details there. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all over the place. You can also drop me an email at info@chromeworks.ca. Please be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube, as you probably are. Very few of the viewers of my stuff actually are subscribed to me, and we're trying to make this channel grow. We're coming up on 500 subscribers, and we're looking for more, so please subscribe. In the meantime, I will see you next week with a new Scratch tutorial. Thanks.